Welcome back, free spirits, to another episode of Flying Upstream. I'm Kristen Medeiros, and today we have a guest whose life path is about as unconventional as it gets. Eric Robinson spent 12 years in Christian ministry, including, sorry, I lost my place for a second. Start over. Okay, welcome back, free spirits. Take two. I'm Kristen, and today we have a guest whose life path is about as unconventional as it gets. Eric Robinson spent 12 years in Christian ministry, including pastoring a church. Then in his early 30s, burned out and faced mounting stress, he made a dramatic shift. He joined the FBI. Over the next 24 years, he worked cases ranging from counterterrorism to crimes against children, gangs, drugs, and public corruption. He served 15 years on a SWAT team, became a firearms and tactics instructor, and worked in human intelligence recruiting informants. Now retired from the Bureau, Eric is writing about the surprising, intense, and sometimes even humorous moments from a career that took him deep into both the darkest and most fascinating corners of human behavior. Eric, welcome to Flying Upstream.
Thanks so much, Kristen. All those things are true.
Good. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. You grew up in a Christian household and eventually went into ministry. What did that path look like in your early years, and what originally drew you into that world?
Yeah, I grew up in a Christian home. We went to church every Sunday. My parents loved me. It wasn't a over-the-top type of Christianity, but it was something that we were very faithful to. So as I went to college and my faith kind of coalesced, and I got to a point where I realized, well, I've got a lot of Bible knowledge and I've got a desire to do something about it. And then got married, and my wife and I went into ministry together. And we were intending to go overseas to minister to Muslims. And there were some issues that came up along the way, some family issues where we decided this might not be the best time to go overseas. And so we took the usual path where I was a youth pastor and then an associate pastor until the church I was in Western New York said, well, we'd like to start a new church just next town over. And I said, I'd love to do that. And I took a core group of Christians with me and we set up a new church, and I got to do ministry, I felt, in the way I really wanted to, not having to follow someone else, but to start something that reached out to people who wouldn't normally go to church and create something where, as I told the folks in the church, if we're going to make an error, let's err on the side of grace, of being accepting of people. And we did well.
That's beautiful. So I love that you decided to create the church designed specifically for people who wouldn't normally step into a church. So what was more about the vision behind that, and what made it so different from a traditional congregation?
Well, what made it different, I thought, was how I established, we had a core group of Christians, but we didn't want to just bring in new people to put money in the plate from a different church. And so I gave that core group what I called a flinch test. And that was asking them, if someone comes into the church wearing a Def Leppard concert t-shirt, are you going to be okay? And not just shake their hand, but like, is there going to be a look on your face like, And this was a Baptist church where everybody wore suits that we came from, but we were trying to make it something that was welcoming. What if an interracial couple came? Oh, are you okay with that? Are you okay with a homosexual couple? Are you okay if you smell alcohol on their breath? Because we want them in the church. We want to win an audience with them. We want them to feel welcomed before we start telling them, hey, this is how you have to change your life and do everything different. We want them to know that we love them and accept them. And we also have something we'd like to share with you too.
And I know from the outside, it sounds like the church was really successful. People were coming, lives were being shared, real problems were being brought forward. But internally, things were getting harder for you. What was happening beneath the surface?
Yeah, That's part of the problem I didn't plan on, that when you set up a church that's supposed to reach out to people who didn't grow up in a great family and always went to church each week, they had a lot of their own issues. And when they brought those issues into the church, I was helping them deal with them. But the problem was, better men have known how to handle this than I, and I internalized it. And so when someone would come to me and say, "Hey, I think my kid is becoming a drug addict," I didn't just pray with them and then go on to something else. I took it home and it weighed on me, and I didn't know how to let it go. And because of that, I had stress related headaches every single day, no exaggeration, without fail for 2 years straight. And even though I was getting to do church the way I felt like this is the way it should be, and it was working well, I finally told my wife, I have to find something different. And it's not a joke to me, but I joke this way, that I had to find something less stressful, so I joined the FBI.
Well, I think that says a lot about how much stress you were under, that the FBI was maybe less stressful, or stressful in a different way, we'll say.
In a different way, yeah.
Yeah. So, was there a moment or a series of moments where you realized something had to change? Because you mentioned that the problems that people brought to you, you weren't able to really just let them go. It started affecting you mentally and physically. Was that a moment where you're just kind of broke and you said, I can't keep going down this path? Like, what are my choices and what does this look like for me?
Yeah, that moment came when I had been fighting this for a year, year and a half, and just, I'll tough it out because I like what's going on otherwise. And then we got pregnant, and I it wasn't a mega church, so I wasn't making mega money. Uh, and my wife had a pretty meager job too, but our insurance was through her job. We knew she was going to have to stay at home, and so now, kid on the way, that's more, less income, also now needing to pay more. It all just came to a place where now the stress is even increasing more, and I made that decision where, unfortunately, I have to do what's best for my health. I have to do what's best for my family coming up too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's always a tough decision to change directions in life, and then on top of that, having the stress of baby on the way, especially if it's your first child. You really have no idea what life will be like, how your life will change.
Well, and
So
and I imagine, like, I'd be doing this till I was 80. It's not a
yeah.
it's not a physically stressful job. I thought, okay, here we go. I'll just keep doing this. And there I am in my early 30s saying, oh, career change.
And something I think we don't talk about enough in our society is that, yes, it's hard to change significantly. Like in your case, you went from being a pastor in your own church to now to the FBI. You're having headaches, a lot of mental stress. You have a baby on the way. But as hard as it is to change careers, when you thought you were going to be doing this till you were 80, that is hard enough. But taking time to actually grieve for that life that you are giving up and the life that you will now never have because of this change you're making, that there is real sadness in that. And even though you went onto the path that was ultimately right for you, it's still hard to carry with you, just sort of knowing that, yeah, you had to let that go. And that was, probably really hard.
Well, and it was more than just a career change that I had to let go, because I had started a church. So it, I'm moving away from what was in the sense of calling, but also here was a group of 200 people that I felt like I was abandoning. Here's the child, and I had to leave the child to go do something else. And I felt a lot of guilt from that too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something we just don't acknowledge enough, right? We're always like, oh, on to the next thing. Let's be positive. But it's also important to take that time and realize, like, yeah, you're feeling guilty, you're abandoning this beautiful church that you started, and maybe you were feeling a little bit selfish because you had to spend some energy on your family now, and there's a lot to that. So
Yep.
okay, so now you're in your early 30s when all of this is happening. And that's a point in life where a lot of people feel like their identity is already locked in. So leaving the ministry and doing something completely different, we know is pretty scary. And you applied to the FBI. What made you look at the Bureau and think, that's where I belong?
Well, the FBI is pretty cool, and I never lost that excitement. I remember when I got accepted to the FBI. Well, number one, that day my headache stopped. So I took that as a cue that, okay, this is a right decision. And then I also thought, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And even though I go into work each day and for 24 years did tedious things many times, there are also many occasions, investigations, arrests where I would go, this is amazing that I am here. But having that transition and uh, like adapting to something new, it felt more comfortable, and it didn't take long for me to see that. I realized, and I did know it when I was a pastor, but looking back, I could see it's like taking off wet socks. When you're wearing wet socks, you're like, oh, that's annoying. But then when you take them off, you're like, oh my gosh, that was terrible.
Yeah.
But looking back, I could see how much I had to wear a mask all the time as a pastor, which probably led to some of the stress that I had to be perfect. I had to be positive, happy, and have the right answers. That's how I perceive things. I was the lone pastor of the church, and so I had people with me. I had grown men that I could turn to, but it wasn't the same. So that idea of just being a regular human being who, okay, I can still have the same principles, but there's no expectation on me that, don't drink, don't smoke, don't go to movies, don't play cards, don't listen to music that's not Amy Grant. Like, I could just be who I am, and that felt a lot freer.
Yeah, I can imagine. I like your analogy of the wet socks. It's like you don't even know, you don't realize when you're in it,
Yeah,
the mask you put on, how difficult it is, like trying to run in a pool, right? You're trying to run
right,
in water. Like you don't realize it because that's your baseline.
right.
And
With
that's what you
with socks on, with
with
socks on.
socks on, yeah. And that's what you're used to. And then when that completely changes, it is a huge surprise. You're like, wow, this is so much more aligned with who you are. And I love that. Okay, so now I was surprised to learn that you joined the FBI having never shot a gun before.
I
And
never, I never hunted. I didn't do anything.
and then you eventually ended up on a SWAT team and later became a firearms instructor. So how did that transformation even happen?
Well, so what's crazy for me is I've never met someone who had the same path as me, but my first squad I was on was a drug squad in Chicago, and one of my squad mates who was on SWAT, I wasn't on SWAT yet. He was literally Stone Cold Steve Austin. He looked like him, big guy, shaved head, and I just always assumed everybody else was made for the FBI, like they're all former cops or something. And I said, okay, Dana, what did you used to do? And he said, I was a banker. And I thought that didn't fit. But he had been in long enough where he had grown into what was natural for him. So for me, I think a lot of it was working the the drug cartels in Chicago, then working gangs. I got experience, and then sought to now within this group, like, oh, I can better myself this way. I can challenge myself. I can be part of a brotherhood with SWAT where we risk our lives next to each other, and that builds such camaraderie and closeness. And then we're also trying to reach the highest level that we can be as an agent. So I came in as an agent, and we're doing firearms, and I'm skipping rounds off the pavement because I'm anticipating the bang, and so I'm pushing it down. And I thought, I don't know if I'm ever going to get here. got to be okay. And then along the way, that became part of me. Like, oh, okay, let me see how I can better myself. If I'm going to carry a gun, if I'm going to protect the public and the people next to me, well, I should be the best that I can at that. And so I practiced until I was pretty good. And then with SWAT, it's the best part of being an agent is going out and arresting people. I'm like, oh, here we go. We get to do this even more. Great.
I love that. Well, I especially appreciate the mentality around if you're going to be shooting a gun and obviously want to keep innocent people safe, then yeah, you should try to be the best you can be at it. Like that's a really great mindset to have, especially because while you are fighting for good, there are some things that happen along the way that you need to be mindful of, right? Like you obviously don't want to injure an innocent person. So
Right. We're
really nice.
accountable. Yeah, we're accountable.
Yeah, exactly. Being accountable. Yeah. All right. So you spent 15 years in that role, literally breaking down doors and entering dangerous situations. What was it like living in that world, especially after coming from a pastoral background?
Well, I found that who I was as a pastor, I was implementing church devices. This is what we do in the church, but it was also who I was. And that didn't stop when I got into the FBI. And so many of the practices I had as a pastor were just who I was as a person. And so what I like to explain is when you see the trope of someone coming in and arresting a very bad person who deserves everything they're getting, and then they start pounding the table and yelling, I didn't find a need for that, because if I break down your door and me and 20 guys are pointing rifles at you, I put handcuffs on and I show you a piece of paper that says I can take you to prison, I've already established that I'm in charge. And so at that point, I can I can allow for kindness. I can allow for patience. I can allow to treat you with humanity. And if you want to curse me and if you want to yell back, I could take that because I'm in charge. Like you're just trying to save face. And so I found that many times bringing in those aspects of just listening to people, treating them with curiosity and with patience, the kind of things I used to do as a pastor where somebody was telling me all their problems. I was trying to get to that place with victims, with a lot of the criminals, where I I was open to what they had to say, and I feel like that got me that got me into good spots. Whether it's with victims trusting me, with informants doing work for the government, or even with bad guys opening up and finding themselves telling me things they know they shouldn't be telling me, but I'm treating them okay.
Yeah. You know, it occurred to me that when you started this church and you were doing the flinch test, as you said, where would you be okay if somebody came in like a Def Leppard shirt or a Metallica shirt or, a gay couple, a biracial couple, like that almost seems it was actually on the path for you to getting back to your true alignment. Because when you are in this particular role on the SWAT team, you are working with people from all kinds of backgrounds, right?
Yep.
And having that combination of welcoming people from all backgrounds, but also that pastoral training, as you said, of treating people like people, no matter what you've done, giving them that opportunity to feel heard and feel seen, even though we're still going to arrest you and put you in jail, but still treating them with that kindness. It's almost like this was the path for you to get to the FBI.
Well, and I felt like it wasn't too far removed to believe that I was still doing God's work, because part of what I believe God wants is for people to be made whole and to have justice. And so if you have something wrong done to you, the church can pray for you, reach out, give you comfort, but they're not going to be able to bring justice in some of the ways that we could with the FBI. And I found that with many of the victims that we work with, that this is the only way that they were going to see something good come about in their lives. Working with teen prostitutes, yeah, their first reaction was to yell at me and slap me because I was arresting the love of their life. And then they could realize, oh, now I'm getting to a place where I'm actually healing, where I'm outside of this manipulation, and you're helping to bring in people who are going to change my life for the better and bring in those who actually care for me. And that's something they were seeing for the first time often.
So over the course of your career, you worked everything from counterterrorism, crimes against children, public corruption, as we said, teen prostitutes. So when you're interacting with these people, what do you feel like you learned about human nature?
So one thing I had to have in mind always was a growing cynicism, because when all that you get to work at 8 a.m. and everything that I'm digging into is criminality and bad people, and sometimes like very bad. There's somebody who steals money from people, and you're like, yeah, that's bad. And then there's somebody who's stealing money from, uh, as one victim I had a disabled son, and she was trying to multiply her life savings from her husband's death so that she could take care of her son. And this man just steals her money. It's hard not to think everyone is terrible. But then also, Gordon Allport had a theory in the 1950s, the contact principle, that when you have contact with people, it also can help you understand them, usually with different races and classes. So I had on one hand to deal with not thinking everybody is criminal, but also here I am interacting with a teen prostitute. When else is someone doing that to understand what they went through? Here I am interacting with gang members. Oh, here are multiple men that I had as informants who are Muslims, and yet they're very, very patriotic. Well, I was being trained to go and change their faith. Now I'm listening more to hear, what point they're coming from, and we would have great conversations about this.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. So it sounds like you actually learned a lot about humanity and maybe about yourself too in this whole process.
Well, yes, and if you can find a way to draw the line between being burdened by or jaded by the terrible things you see, but being able to lift the curtain and be exposed to that, as long as that exposure doesn't blacken your soul, and I don't feel like it did, as long as it doesn't harm you, it's important to understand what's in society more than just the people that are in your circle that you talk to.
Right.
I mean, I get to talk to people who used to be felons, and so now they're working with me, and I get to understand what it's like to have gone through that process too.
Absolutely. You've had an incredible life, multiple careers too. And as we kind of wind down now, I've got one last question for you. If someone listening right now feels stuck in a life path that isn't right for them, maybe they've stayed too long out of fear or obligation like you did, what would you want them to hear?
I fought through the headaches for so long. I don't think it affected me long term, but I put up with pain that I shouldn't have because I feared change, because I feared what else might be out there. And some of it was because I held on to something in the past. But just like when your girlfriend breaks up with you and you cry for a couple days, and then you meet the love of your life, that could be out there. And I absolutely found that. So I would have, if I could have gone back in time, I would have told me, hey, it's going to be all right. Humans are resilient. Any difficulty that you think you're going to face, you will rebound and get through it. And beyond that, I ended up not just having to rebound, I ended up finding so much more fulfillment.
That's beautiful. Eric, this has been an incredible conversation. Your story is such just a powerful and really lovely reminder that sometimes the path we think we're supposed to stay on isn't actually the one we're meant to follow. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your perspective with us today. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.